Okay, look, I didn't want to talk about today's topic, but I think there is a genuine danger here that needs to be discussed. This is a follow-up to a video I did about Roger Waters, and I think you need the context of it to understand this video. So yeah, maybe watching that video first before watching this one would be a good idea. Anyways, Roger Waters is on a Ukrainian terrorist watch list. Now this wasn't picked up by most, however it did gain a bit of traction in Pink Floyd circles, and I'd rather just bludgeon it to death before it grows into something worse. A lot of what's being said about it is just blatantly wrong, and I want to clarify and explain what this is exactly. So, what is this list? Well, Myrotvorets, or Peacemaker, sorry if I mispronounced all that, is a website and NGO that documents the enemies of Ukraine. These range from politicians to journalists and even some public figures like Roger Waters. Reasons for which they appear on the list vary, but that's the basic rundown. Info is relatively scarce when it comes to how much they actually help the country. It's not an official Ukrainian government website, however it has been reported that it's been used at checkpoints, so make of that what you will. The site's founder, politician George Tuka, is proud of the site, saying, "Myrotvorets plays a vital role in defending Ukraine. Many collaborators, or those working for the Russian FSB, don't appear on the official government databases. They slip into Ukraine unnoticed or exist among us unknown. No doubt there would be huge resistance if the Russians invaded, but a certain echelon of the population would greet them with flowers. It is important to know who they are. Warfare is an act of faith." However, that's not to say Myrotvorets is without controversy. Most of this criticism is about the site's publishing of journalists' personal info paired with some pretty charged language, which has led to threats of violence among other things. Over the years, various groups such as the G7 and the UN have called for it to be at the very least reworked. And in 2017, the Ukrainian National Police opened a criminal case about the entire site. To say that Myrotvorets, with its doxing and language, is really something that's celebrated would be, well, wrong. It's a controversial site for some pretty good reasons. So with a simple explanation out of the way, let's talk about the page itself. Now just to give a heads up, when I went to Myrotvorets, the first thing I saw was a picture that compiled photos of dead bodies, so if that stuff bugs you, looking into this yourself might not be a great idea. I'm not going to show anything, of course, but I'm just going to give that warning. Now, the page itself is relatively short. Waters is accused of anti-Ukrainian propaganda, attempts of the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and participation in attempts to legalize Russia's annexation of Crimea. That's where the facts end in terms of reporting, because most sources who ended up talking about this issue turned straight to conspiracy theories. The biggest thing to disprove right off the bat was that Waters' addition is something new. It isn't. Even though I've never heard about this before, there are archives and reports going all the way back to 2018 after Waters made a statement about Crimea. Even the page itself mentions this statement. It has nothing to do with the Smirkanish interview. This didn't stop one Deborah L. Armstrong from framing it this way, even though on the page itself and in the article it says 2018. This is just blatantly wrong information that should have been called out instantly. Next, Waters is most likely not in any danger. Going back to Armstrong's article, they mention how various people on the website are now dead, and the examples aren't that great. For example, Daria Dugina was the daughter of Alexander Dugin, someone who has been said to be an influence on Putin and someone who has ties to various radical groups. That's a political target. There's Andrea Rocelli, an Italian journalist who was killed while trying to report on the Donbass War in 2014. I tried to find any connection between Rocelli's death and Myrotvorets, and I couldn't find anything. He and another journalist stopped to take photos, and they were killed by gunfire and mortar strikes from atop a hill. It's a blow against humanitarian laws, but is it really connected to Myrotvorets? That's unclear. Right now, it's guilt by association. The only two examples that I could suspect were because of the site were Olez Buzina and Oleg Kalashnikov, both who were killed days after they were doxxed on the site. So yeah, there are people on the list who are dead, but the examples are scattered throughout the site's nearly 10-year history, and the prominent examples are, in my opinion, a bit of a reach. If this site was some sign of who's to die next, they've been holding off on Waters for quite a bit. The truth of it is, he's a low-priority person in the grand scheme of things. If Waters was this much of a danger to the integrity of Ukraine, let's be real, he'd probably be dead. Then there's the claim that the site is hosted by NATO, and while there are some connections, a lot of it is really, really weak. This thread by a Russian journalist tried to explain how NATO was involved, but it ended up disproving itself. After tons and tons of posts, it gets explained that it's hosted on Cloudflare. You know, the guys who host KiwiFarms. Even Armstrong's article shows that it's hosted on Cloudflare, but with speculation about why the site is hosted in California. It's hosted there because that's where Cloudflare is based out of. But to me, even from the start, this was a bad claim if you realize that the G7 already argued against the site. Now, do I think it would be impossible for large countries to lie? No, obviously not, but it's another tally against the claim. Not to mention, you can find the word PSYOPs in the code, and the admin names are literally NATO, NSA, etc. Now, hear me out, why would NATO, a high-class military alliance, or the FBI, CIA, and other various services put this stuff right out in the open? If this really was some secretive plan, they wouldn't do this. The person who explained the Cloudflare info guessed that they're essentially red herrings, and I have to agree. It's the most likely answer here because, let's be real for a second, the CIA might be evil, but at least they tried to cover their tracks. Gotta hand it to Myrotvorets, this is a galaxy brain play. There's more to this whole thing that disproves the whole NATO claim, but I'm just going to leave it there. To me, the people who made us think about Myrotvorets did it for all the wrong reasons. Waters' page was picked up because it was a perfect storm. Waters had just found himself in a controversy over Ukraine, and the anti-NATO crowd had a ball to throw back regardless of if it was related. It would generate interest and it would generate clicks. The evidence of the claims didn't matter, the mere idea of them was enough, and that's dangerous regardless of where you stand. There's absolutely reasons to be against Myrotvorets. It has shown itself to be dangerous, but making up stuff to get outraged at is dangerous too. If the past 6 years have shown us anything, it's that conspiracy theories aren't to be taken lightly. We've seen that misinformation can lead to horrible outcomes, and we need to do everything in our power to hold the truth up as well, the truth regardless of political leaning. There's a difference between a conspiracy theory and a genuine conspiracy, and this is the former. It's working back from a preconceived notion to try and support their belief. Anybody spreading these talking points needs to be met with a lot of skepticism because the truth just isn't there. This is literally a conspiracy theory. Again, I really don't want to make videos about this topic, but basic research into any of these controversies seems trivial to most. People are going to believe what they want to, and that leads to a dumber conversation that isn't worth having. I blame a lot of this on journalists and media outlets who didn't bother with the slightest bit of research. They put their chips on the titles and the drama of it all, but few gave the context that these discussions deserve, and this leads to people believing that these discussions are one thing when they aren't. I'm just tired at this point because I'm seeing the effects of it. I'm in a few Pink Floyd groups across the internet. I follow a ton of pages too, and every time these discussions happen, they're bad. It is Roger Waters is a saint who's getting targeted by NATO, or Roger Waters was never good, Gilmore was always the true spirit, and I don't care. It's tiring. Again, I'm not trying to be a centrist on any of these issues, but God, everybody comes out of this looking like an idiot. I promise that this is the last video I'll ever make on this topic, but it's just frustrating. I just hate that this is where we're at. In short, Myrotvorets isn't a NATO-backed kill list that puts Roger into much danger from everything I've gathered. It's a controversial site with a shady history of doxing and provocative language that might be used by the Ukrainian government. Is it something I think you should be worried about as a Pink Floyd fan? Not really. I think the people who are making a big deal out of this need to be met with a lot of skepticism given their claims. That's all I have to say about this issue, and I promise I won't ever talk about this controversy again. Good night.